I'd like to introduce my panelists here. To your left and my right, Stephen Miller. He's the founder of TwinPeaksBlog.com. He's written for 25 years later? No?
Blue Rose
Blue Rose Magazine and Disney Parks Blog.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
And to my right is Jason Mattson, who is a prop collector and a talented artist who's recreated many of the Twin Peaks props before you. So we're here today to talk about our mutual hobby of identifying and researching and collecting and recreating props from our favorite TV shows.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start broad. Why do we do this?
Why do we do this?
Twin Peaks is special. I think we could all agree. It's not every TV show where people fixate on these tiny, minute details. What do you guys think makes it so special?
I think it's world building, you know, and in my mind, I want to get lost in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you can step into these places, right? You're here this weekend and you're going to Giant Cafe, you're seeing the waterfall, you're seeing these places, but then for me, it's the identifying of these objects, these things that have energy or have, I don't know, these just iconic things. And so I want to be a part of that world, and I think by finding these things, it keeps me grounded in that Twin Peaks reality.
Yeah, and there's so much that's fantastical about the series, so it's nice to find that grounding element that connects it to our world.
Yeah, and I think because these are real objects, just like these are real places that we're in, like there's history that, you know, you think of tweeds, right? You know, and long ago there was the martini. You know, I mean, you have a lot of history that's in that, and then these objects, these things that are found in the show. There's history, and they help tell the story. I think that's the other piece too. We know all about the actors. We know all about the writers and David Lynch and other directors and so forth. But then there's all this other crew, these people that are going and set decorating or finding these items that help complete them. I think a particular story. And I love being able to showcase that.
We're gonna be sharing the mics here. Jason, wrap this away whenever.
No, yeah, for me it's like I mentioned, like having that connection to the show, having like a real life little bit of that fake art, you know, fictional world that hold my hand and connect me with it. And it's those little details you see in a flash, like Laura's autopsy report, you know, and being able to like study those little details and see what everyone doesn't see, or you know, maybe you'll find out a little secret that you know, otherwise, you know, you would never know about it. So it's, yeah, those little extra things that make it fun.
Do you guys remember the first prop that drove you to do the research, to track one down for yourself?
I do. Do you remember yours? Well, I think it was probably the Saturn lamp, which, yeah, like, instantly seeing that, I was like, that's the thing, I want it. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, that was probably the first one I purchased. And then Dr. Jacoby's Tie was the first one I made. So.
Yeah.
The Saturn lamp, so it's funny that John Thorne just walked in, because I remember writing Wrapped in Plastic, because I love Blade Runner. It's like my second favorite film. Vertigo's the first. It's that Blade Runner. And there's a scene in Deckard's apartment that has the Saturn lamp. And I remember writing Wrapped in Plastic, and John published the letter, and like even had a picture of Rick Deckard, you know, Harrison Ford's character. But I remember that was the thing where I saw it like someplace else, you know, from that. I think the first thing I remember identifying, so, you know, there was a time, I launched Twin Peaks blog in 2018. Before that, when the return was on, so there was Twitter and social media and all that kind of stuff. But there was Twin Peaks Archive. And so Brother Jerry, he had a lot of props that were, you know, from the show and so forth. He would put them on his site. And I think it was the hot dog platter. I remember this is probably like in the late 2000s, maybe early 2010. The hot dog platter in Johnson's house, right above
Yep.
the stove.
Yeah.
I remember like using really bad screen caps and like trying to identify that
So
one. I think that was one of the
understand.
first. Yeah.
Definitely one of my favorites. The Johnson house, if you guys look closely, you'll find a dog motif in all of the decor. I should say we're talking about props and set decoration sort of interchangeably here. Just the physical things that flesh out the world. But yeah, if you look closely at the Johnson house, you'll find a hot dog platter with anthropomorphic hot dogs and a long dachshund. You'll find a dog statue on the counter. You'll find a lenticular poodle on the wall that Steven's written about for Twin Peaks blog.
Yeah, there's dogs and there's clowns. There's dogs and clowns. For whatever reason, the Johnson house is dogs and clowns from that. But you know, I think it's a fun quest. Like, you know, to me, it's a game, right? And it's like when you're looking for something like, oh, I wonder what that is, you know, and I wonder what the history of. I see that icon so much, you know, and so I want to try to find where it's from.
And so much of television is kind of geared to keep you thinking about the characters and not fixate on those background details. And Twin Peaks is so different in that it's so rich. Those unique things are not whitewashed so as not to distract from the plot, and it really adds layers to the world.
Vinnie, do you remember your first?
I don't know if I remember my first. Well, I should say some of the things that got me into collecting props and replicas in the first place were the things that you guys have written. You guys posted about things that you found. I remember you written about the green mug from the sheriff's station.
Yeah.
And Jason had written about the scroll lamp from the Palmer house in Firewalk with Me. And seeing those and realizing like, oh, these things are out there. They're obtainable if you know what to look for. That kind of launched a very expensive hobby for me.
It is funny because I think being a fan, this year marks 30 years for me. I discovered it in '93 after the series had run on ABC. And it was VHS, the first 7 episodes on VHS, the pilot, the first 7 episodes. And then I watched Firewalk with Me because there was no option for season 2. You couldn't find it. So that ruined it. But then I discovered it on Bravo, and Bravo TV then had picked it up, and I remember picking up right when Wyndham Earl arrived in town. So I then missed all of the other parts of season 2, and then I went back and got the little bad VHS and so forth. But we're watching VHS, right? And so like trying to identify these things and so forth, you know, way back then would have been, just you don't see the amount of clarity, I think, that some of the Blu-ray.
The game has changed.
It really has.
Physical media.
And then not only has it changed, but I think of like how do we find these things? You know, is it intuition? Is it, you know, stuff? Some of it is like you said. There's certain themes and motifs, right, that we certainly find, you know, and stuff. But I think of tools like Google image search, where you can take and you can reverse search an image, and sometimes it pulls up, you know, a match. that makes it very easy, you know, if you're trying to find something. But then eBay has certainly, I think, also really kind of given us new tools to be able to find something, but it's trying to determine what it's called. We're like trying to identify, like, well, what is that thing? I know that it exists, but how would I describe it, you know, in some way to give enough of a search, and then hope that someone has it for sale out there and has posted it someplace that then you can then do more digging around using tools like newspapers.com or even just Google searches in general. You know, somebody else, because time has passed 30 plus years, it might exist. Somebody else may have had something related to it but never made the connection that Twin Peaks is where that prop is.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about the art of sleuthing. Jason, do you have any keywords in your eBay saved searches that are attached to a white whale that you're still?
Oh well, I'm always wanting to find the original, like Laura's tiara. Like, yeah, so every day I look for vintage tiaras and look for just the right one. Man, yeah, there's like a huge list of my emails that are, you know, pulled from eBay searches and whatnot. And then, you know, sometimes you'll put in like, you know, vintage paddleball and I'll get lucky and find out what, in like the second search. So yeah, it's funny. You just keep searching. Sometimes you put in the random right combination and there it is. It just pops up.
I have several years worth of emails regarding rotating ballerina. And I've yet to turn up the correct one.
Well, like, you know, you were lucky to find the creepy clown that, you know, Leo left in his bed. Something like that. Like, how do you? Yeah, I searched for that one. That's a great one.
So yeah, there's different keywords that are going to get you close, but not all the way.
Right.
And you find something that looks similar, but might not be the thing. But you think maybe the same company made that. And you go down that company's rabbit hole, and sometimes you find what you're looking for. Sometimes you learn more than you anticipate about a vintage toy company, and end up with nothing.
One, I love that's what Vinnie does, like on his 12 rainbow trout Instagram, he'll, you know, post like the history of, you know, each individual prop, and so you just take that strange little deep dive, which is fun. So you learn a little bit more about, you know, things beyond Twin Peaks. So it's great.
It's nice to have some kind of real world context for some of these set decorations, especially when you find a running theme like the Johnson house. It keeps coming back to the Johnson house. It's a very rich set. There is a paper clown decoration on the wall that's made by the Beastle Company, who still exists. You've probably seen some of their designs. They've collaborated with Creepy Co. in recent years. They made this clown decoration, and they're the same company that made the paper party hats when Leo returns home in the wheelchair. And so you're just like, okay, the Johnsons, they use products from the Beastle Company.
Yeah. But, you know, I think the piece about the history, so on Twin Peaks blog, I was trying to find, when I launched it, how do I provide some other resource that hasn't already been done? I mean, again, you have great folks like John and Scott and, you know, and Andrew from 25 years later. They're all doing this great analysis, JB. I mean, they're all like, they can get into the deep dives of like, you know, these characters and the stories and how it all can be. I want facts. It's like, I'm great at finding just the facts, man. You know, like, I like the history of it. I like understanding the context of it. And so the approach was, how do you make this the most factual type site, and understanding the where it's been, right, and kind of the history of that. So getting into doing dives within newspapers.com, because, you know, print newspapers for a long time, you know, that was the thing. I mean, that was the thing of record. And while that transitions to more of a digital phase, my first job was a paper boy, you know, for the Columbus Dispatch in Ohio. It's great being able to go back and find so much of the history now, you know, saved, because people have scanned all those newspapers, and then you can find different stuff that's just forgotten, you know, and maybe was big at the time, but had, you know, you just don't remember that company because they're out of business now. But that prop that lives on for 30 plus years in a television show that I absolutely love, it just brings it all back and connects it to some real world thing, because there's probably mom or pop, somebody else out there that has that same item, but again, just never made the connection as part of the show.
And that's one of the things I enjoy about Twin Peaks blog as a community resource. It becomes an extension of that archive, like newspapers.com, where, you know, the information that you have to sift through becomes more specific. And so now people that are looking for the same things we're looking for the same reasons, don't have to do that legwork anymore.
But it's fun, and the thrill, oh my gosh, like in Diane Evans' apartment, there was an album, and you can tell it was a record album. I collect vinyl, I have like thousands of vinyl, and I knew it was a record album. I knew that was a thing. I remember in the Marsh Mansion, there was 2 albums in the scene where, you know, and I helped identify those, could figure out what those were. But then I knew that Diane Evans had this album, and I was like, I want to know what album that is, you know. And I tried using not the high definition, just screen caps from like the broadcasting TV. It wasn't until the Blu-ray was released of season 3 that I was finally able. But I was digging through jazz album archives, because I thought, well, maybe it's mid-century, maybe it's some type of, you know, mid-century pop type thing or whatever it is. But I finally found it. It was classical of all things, but I think it was the art on the cover. It was that like turquoise blue, and it just really popped and really just set with all the colors in that in that set and complemented it well. I don't know if it has any meaning behind it. You know, it was like the Claude, I think it's the Claude Debussy and Ravel album. You know, but it wasn't. But I found it. That thrill. Oh my gosh! I think my wife will attest that. I come running in. I found it. And that was probably like 3 weeks worth of just like digging endlessly for some albums. You're talking about albums. I love what you did for Jukebox.
Oh, sure.
Talk a little about that.
Yeah. So I've got the same model of jukebox that was in the Double R Diner, the Seaberg LPC one, and it has like these featured albums in the back that are very, you know, and so I've been able to identify all but the very middle one, which is a picture of a guy with his hand in his pocket and he's got a hairy arm and a watch on. And I have no idea who that is. Oh my gosh, for hours and hours and hours.
Sometimes you find yourself extensively Googling album art, hairy arm.
Yeah, no, right. So that one I kind of recreated digitally, and I'm pretty happy with it. But then also, like, there's these like handwritten notes on it of like by a band from Seattle from the late '80s called Big Tube Squeezer, and so I like had to recreate those, and then I posted that. And come to find out, one of the guys in the band was somehow worked on the pilot, so he kind of snuck his band in there. Then in like season 3, they bring the jukebox back, but it has these new featured albums, and and you never really get a good shot of it, but somebody was kind enough, like they were around for the filming and snapped a photo of it behind the scenes, and so from that photo I was able to so I was able to go in and like deep dive and like try and figure out who all these albums were, and they're all local Seattle bands. And someday I want to add that to the blog because it'd be fun. But none of these bands knew that they were featured in the jukebox. It was like, and luckily most of them were actual Twin Peaks fans too, so it was a great surprise.
Sweet.
So yeah, it's a fun thing.
Speaking of season 3 and how things from the show tie into the real world, I want to ask you about season 3 screen use props. I know we're mainly talking about replicas here. Some of Jason's replicas that he had collected had an interesting trajectory in that they started as replicas and became original.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell that story?
Sure. So, welcome to Twin Peaks. Before they started filming season 3, they put out a notice that they were looking for original props for the show. So I messaged them and I told them that I've got some Chef's Wear mugs and a chair that's really similar to Dale Cooper's from the Black Lodge. And so they jumped on the Chef's Wear mugs. I sent them 9 of them. And so, as far as I know, you can see them in the show. A few background scenes. And this might be the one Big Ed's holding when Norma comes and confesses her love. There's no way knowing. But, and then they kind of hemmed and hawed, but they finally said yes, they want to borrow my chair. And the one I had red upholstery, and I ended up like refinishing the wooden accents and stuff like that. But they actually sent a band to my house, picked it up, sent it to LA. They reupholstered it with beautiful fabric. Then once they were done shooting, they sent it back by the same band. And so yeah, now I've got Dale Cooper's actual chair.
Wow. Cool.
So, any of you have the Z2A box set with the little stand-up figure of Cooper and Laura? You have essentially an action figure of Jason's chair.
Vinnie, I want to talk about you talk about the mugs and how props reappeared. And I think that's something that's fascinating because I know that there's collectors out there that love the carafe, the triangle carafe that when Sheriff Truman in the Great Pilot, he's going to get coffee and it's this like carafe that he's like sitting next to him. It's very like mid-century type thing.
This is the scene in the lobby of the sheriff's station where Lucy is describing what call the phone is kind of.
Yes.
And it was fascinating to identify that one. That was probably also one of the early ones I remember identifying and getting, one of the, it wasn't the actual one, but one on eBay, and finding. But then surprised to see it reappear. And same happened with the green mugs. The same happens with a painting that was in the Palmer House in episode 2, when like Leland's, maybe episode 1, it was very early on, but there's a scene of Mountain One, and it reappears in the sheriff's station many years ago. And I just have to think, and I don't know, but I'm thinking like there's reasons that somebody wanted to have that reappear, whether it be continuity or whatnot, but it just seems like there's several of those things that make a leap from the original to return.
It could either be Easter eggs planted deliberately for us, or people thinking, they'll never notice.
We will.
Little do they know.
But yeah, let's talk about traveling props.
Yeah.
Because there's a few set decorations and props that appear on multiple sets, and one of the things that I enjoy about Twin Peaks blog is that it's not just identifying these props and providing context for the manufacturer, we're following them through the series. So maybe talk a little
Well, the
bit
green mug, I mean, that was definitely one that, I remember tracking that one. It kind of floats around. The Santa Claus mug, there's a Santa Claus mug that,
Yes.
it makes multiple appearances. Then he just had an article about one of the mugs that is found in Double R.
There's a Syracuse China mug in the Double R. If you guys went to the dinner at Tweets last night, I think that was used in the photo op in the booth in there. But yeah, tracking these things around sets.
The
Yeah.
CCX mug.
Yes, the CCX mug is another one too that actually appears in the pilot, in Big Ed's,
Big Ed's, and
Big
then-
Ed's gas farm, and then reappears
At the sheriff's station.
And it wasn't in Audrey's little
Yeah.
Yes.
hideaway thing.
So
Yeah.
to give a little more context, I apologize if we get off on a tangent about a mug that you have no idea what we're talking about. There's a mug with a semi-truck on it that I can't remember who initially identified it. It might have been a collaborative effort. But it's very prominently featured in episode 1 when Andy is eating a donut and drinking coffee in the sheriff's station. But it also shows up in the pilot, in the background of Big Ed's gas farm, and then in a later scene where Audrey goes through her in the background there.
I have a question in terms of creating props and so forth. Is there a favorite one that you created? Because I mean,
My favorite.
It's awesome to see some of the things appear at Tweets
Sure.
that
No,
you've
that's
worked
been
on,
fun,
which is Anita, is there a favorite one?
Gosh, probably this one, Laura's tiara. Like, I probably put the most work and time into this one. This fellow David Batten in New York has the same replica, and he sent me a bunch of photos. So I found a vintage band that had like the right number of rhinestones, and then from his photos and studying, Laura's homecoming queen photo, I was able to like determine like the right number of rhinestones and get like the right shapes and set all the stones and solder everything so it all come together. And, yeah, so this is probably the one I'm most proud of. So, yeah.
So what you see on the table here are things that Jason has researched meticulously to recreate. And sometimes that involves manually assembling something like that. Sometimes it involves graphic design work.
Oh yeah, a lot.
Do you want to maybe talk about what went into recreating these cigarette cartons?
Oh, sure. This is a Metropolitan cigarette, which are featured throughout like season 1 and 2. There's a green pack in the pilot that actually Steve pointed out next to Leo. So I'm assuming they're menthols. They go with this cream de menthe that he's drinking. And then later on, when Audrey's smoking in the girls' room, she's carrying a red pack of Metropolitans. And then later in season 2, there's a couple of scenes where there's a black pack. But yeah, and so from screen grabs and doing my best to blow up photos, I tried to recreate the font, which was something really close to an existing font. And then the graphic is really similar to what was found on old Chesterfield cigarettes. And then just trying to figure out what everything says, like the ripe Turkish tobacco and the king size, and randomly it says free on the top. So and then just finding other prop packs of cigarettes and kind of figure out how the packaging was made, and like inside just stuff with cardboard and finding like gold foil for the top. And so just a fun little project, yeah. So.
Very cool.
And then probably the toughest one that I didn't realize would be so tough was the chocolate bunny box. This one's as seen in season 3. The pilot one's a little different, but yeah, whoever put these together for season 3 did a really good job. But yeah, because of Steven's blog, he pointed out that these are, the inside it's a Palmer double crisp chocolate bunny. So you can sometimes find these. And those come in a 3-pack, but these are 4-packs. So they actually use the inside insert and cut it in half and combined it to make a 4-pack. And I scanned one of these and basically had to redraw everything to create the little bunny graphic. And yeah, and then I was able to like identify all the fonts and lay everything out, you know, to be able to recreate the box. And yeah, it's kind of made it back. And so, even the barcode works, so you can try it. So.
It might be hard to see from out there, but even the texture of the box, obviously in season 3, we're seeing what's meant to be vintage, and in Jason's recreation, he's managed to get the texture of a vintage paper box pretty close.
Yeah, no, yeah, a little steel wool, yeah.
Steel wool.
Yeah, it was amazing. It worked out great. So, and just, you know, yeah, and not being too careful about like roughing it, you know, or being, you know, manhandling it a little bit, you know. So, yeah.
Can we talk about? I want to talk about, while we're on these recreations, the stockpot soup sign. That was a fun one to track through the series because the specials changed.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Do you guys have a favorite special? A favorite soup of the day?
Rabbit bisque. Yeah, rabbit bisque. I think it's the.
Rabbit bisque is probably the most appalling.
Yeah, I was like, how would that even taste? You know, the pain. But you know that, and trying to find that actual thing, we're guessing it was probably a promotional item or something that was sent out from Stockpot Soup, you know, that people could display and that's for them. And then tracking it, and then the fact that you actually made it, and then you can write on it, like made it like chalkboard, you know, type thing.
It's pretty incredible. These are functional.
Yeah, very functional. I don't think they're like pieces of art. I think that's really the piece too, is that, you know, we were working through all this. It is just a way to appreciate the art that's, you know, these minor details, these minute things. Still though, it again connects it from that fantasy world of Twin Peaks into this real world. And then people go, and there might be someone going to Tweeds today that had no idea. They'll see this sign, they'll not even think anything of it. I mean, they list the specials. There's soup, you know, on that. Sunday's chili, but it's available every day. But that one fan that sees it and like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. The trivet, the bear trivet that's on the back wall that you found, that's in, you know, I've tried to find the original of that for years, and I haven't been able to find it. But the fact that it's there, you know, someone going into it and seeing it, it's those little, I think you said Easter eggs, those little details that I think are fun for fans that appreciate it as much as we do.
And we're a very privileged fan community to be able to actually make those connections with the actual business owners and kind of make it a more complete experience visiting these locations that we're lucky enough are still standing and open. But to have little details like that business owners like Rachel and Max at Tweeds are open to decorating their place of business like our favorite TV show.
Vinnie, is there one that you're trying to find that you have not found yet?
There are many.
Yeah, there are.
All right, let's talk about white whales.
I know.
My white whale is the ceramic figure in the Hurley house. So Nadine has her shelf of knickknacks that's ever changing, sometimes moving around. The one that is constant throughout the series is a ceramic bust of a woman in a bonnet with an eye patch. And I I think the eye patch was added.
Yes.
Just a hunch. I've come close. I found one of those figures, sans eye patch, in a different color.
Oh.
And I didn't pull the trigger because it was part of a set, and it was expensive,
Yeah.
and I've never seen another. What's,
It's up there.
what's on your list? What have you not found
It's
yet?
the angel. It's the guardian angel
Yep.
picture from
Yeah.
Firewalk with Me that Oracle tonight. And I've been
So
close
good.
too. We think, there's a couple of us looking for this thing. We think it's some type of prayer card, maybe from like the 1940s. And I found an image of it on some Flickr site. I still use Flickr. Some folks are surprised. I love it. I think it's a great organizational tool. But I found it on some German album, like a photo album of holy cards. And I reached out to the guy and I was like, I used Google Translate to like write in German, I don't speak German. You know, he wrote me back in English, thankfully, and he's like, no, I don't have really any of the details. But it was that card, and then I found one on eBay that was like cut. The corners were cut, and it was like an octagon shape.
Oh, weird.
But it was somebody already bought it, and I couldn't get to it. But that would be the one.
Even those old listings are helpful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because
Try to piece
going
it-
by screenshots alone, you only have so much to work with. And even like a sold listing or something from years and years ago, just having like a straight-on shot or an idea of the size or when it may have been printed is so helpful in tracking down a replica.
Yeah, it gives you some additional details, and it might be something similar to, like you said, a different color, but maybe there's so that one day that will be that and Sam Stanley's machine, which I think is a modified oscilloscope, maybe.
That's what it looked like,
From
yeah.
what I've gathered, I think it was added. They added to it to make it look like something, but I found one maybe similar. It just seems like very 1950s, the style. Of course, there's that vibe. I mean, that was definitely that 1950s, 60s is definitely a vibe you see. And I think it changes overall, but those are the two.
Unfortunately, 1950s machine.
Doesn't really answer. So it's trying to figure out like, well, what would I call this and how would I describe this? And because you try to pull up these images and try to match it, and it's not always the easiest. Do you have one still?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm dreaming big, but the other two chairs that are in the Black Lodge, besides the one I have, yeah, to complete the collection would be amazing.
Yeah.
But, then of course the statue that we just committed to use, that's great.
For those of you who don't know, Jason has a near complete Red Room setup at his house.
My little corner.
He's obviously got the chair that was used in season 3, but he's painted his own Red Room floor.
Yep.
He's got the side table,
Saturn
replica
lamp.
Saturn lamp.
Yeah.
He's got the torch lamp too, right?
I do, yeah. One torch lamp that's really, really close. I think but same manufacturer. The trumpet's a little shorter, but yeah, really close to it. And then I just upgraded to red velvet curtains, so that's kind of fun. I have a question in the back.
Yeah. One of the things that always bothers me is when people do the red room floor, they do it black and white.
No, brown and cream.
Yeah. I'm curious, when you painted it, what paint did you use for both colors? What were the color palettes?
Well, honestly, I just went to the paint store and found two that were pleasing to my eye, a nice, medium brown and a cream that wasn't too light or too dark. And then I kind of drew out a grid on the floor and did my best to do the chevron in something close to what's seen on screen. And then I just painted off with painter's tape. And I actually used a piece of linoleum. I used the back side of it to lay down primer, and then the cream, and then the brown over it. So tedious but fun.
There are a handful of us who have a little group chat where we try to figure out these details and fill in each other's gaps. I feel comfortable in saying Jason is the paint guy. Anytime anyone's had to match paint, Jason's been
Trying to figure out what color the gold shovel is.
Well, one of the first things I added to my collection was the mid-century scroll lamp seen in the Palmer House in Fire Walk with Me, and Jason had tracked down a replica of that first. The one I found was white, so there's this tall order of not knowing what you're doing and painting something that is valuable in a wider context to make it valuable only in your context.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
Yeah,
So-
mine was pink when I got it, so yeah, I did.
He'd been down this road, and he had sent me the exact Rust-Oleum color that I needed. So I want to talk about a little bit more about blurring the lines of the fictional setting and the real world setting, and sometimes that entails the prop team painting over a logo on a prop or obscuring a brand name, which creates a challenge for people like us who are trying to track these down. Stephen, do you have any frustrating blacked out logos that have been a roadblock for you?
I mean, I love this nod, because it all comes down to the legal. And the legal, we don't want to have copyright infringement, right? Because they probably didn't get approval to use the capture there. But
Sometimes they sneak in, and
yeah.
sometimes they're very deliberately.
yes, crunchies though, that works.
And that was an Earl Hayes,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, I feel like any one of those in particular is trying to find. I remember, though, it's difficult. I think that identifying the TV that gets smashed with Teresa Banks in the trailer, finding that recently, but trying to find the logo and trying to identify the logo with pausing, trying to get like the right frame that like the light picks up enough of Zenith. To then it unlocks the thing, but sometimes it's just difficult. You can't see it gets cropped or it just doesn't illuminate it enough. But once you have that logo, then it's just kind of find the model. If you can identify which model this is, and try to recap it.
There are a few real world logos that sneak into the series, and that's always fun to spot. In the
Cheetos.
pilot,
Oh yeah, in season 3. Yeah.
Cheetos in the third season.
Ranger L, Firewalk with Me.
Yeah, it seems like Firewalk with Me, they got away with showing more labels.
Yeah.
In the pilot episode, in the she's dead wrapped in plastic scene, deep in the background, there's a McDonald's sippy cup. And it's not even like, oh, I see the word McDonald's or the golden arches. You see Grimace.
Yeah. You can't miss Grimace.
So rest assured, Grimace exists within the Twin Peaks
Yeah, so,
universe.
so there could have been a McDonald's in Twin Peaks.
There is definitely a Radio Shack in Twin Peaks.
There definitely is. Yeah.
There are so many props made by the Radio Shack brand realistic. So I'm confident somewhere between the Roadhouse and the Double R is a Radio Shack.
Hamilton was clearly a supplier of costumes for a lot of the actors as well. So, are there any questions that we can answer for you? Yes, in fact.
So first of all, I want to say, you caused me to spend a lot more money than I expected to.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, you put stuff up like the carafe, I had to have the carafe, so I bought it on eBay. But one of the most interesting posts you had was not about really a prop, but it was about the mural that's behind Gordon Cole in Firewalk with Me. The story of how you identified the name of it, and anyway, could you tell that story?
Again, it's one of those like where you see it so often, and I love the first 30 minutes of Firewalk with Me. I could just get lost in Deer Meadow all the time between Chris Isaac and Harry Stanton and Kiefer Sutherland, Gordon. I mean, all of it. I love all of that, and that's such a. He's yelling, Oregon, I was like, that just, and I think they shot that. It probably was in the FBI office where they shot the FBI, which is in downtown Seattle. I'm guessing, just based on some of the I think they probably just put the mural behind him and then just recorded that scene, from that. And that is where Photoshop comes into play. And it was taking a screen cap of that image of him standing in front of the mural and then outlining Gordon Cole and removing him using the content aware tool so that it kind of filled in the spaces, from that. So now I can just get a clean image from that. And I think it was a reverse image search. It was just like going through and trying to find. I think the image is actually from Canada, maybe taken in Canada someplace. I don't remember exactly where. Canada shows up also in other places too. I guess they're so close to the border. Maybe that's why. But the menu, like the double R menu, uses a postcard that is also a scene from Canada. But yeah, and then realizing that that mural still is available. My wife still hasn't approved it to be put up there. She's here, so feel free to encourage her. It actually comes in pieces, so that's the thing. It actually, and I was like, you have it, right? Amy, you have it as well. It came in pieces, so it was like squared. I'd imagine it was like going to be like this big, like, oh, I'm going to roll the mural. No, it was like wallpaper, like you put the square up here, and then you have to match the square there. So it is currently not. But I did buy it, you know, and it is available out there. But again, it was just one of those things that you see it so often, and it's like, that has to be a real thing. You know, that has to be real, like some image that they used and could find it. But using, again, the tools of the day, I don't think we would have been able to find it, you know, when Virology came out, because there was no internet. I mean, like, there was CompuServe. The bulletin boards are alt.tv.twin Peaks, I think it was, you know, some of that service. But there was just not the tools that we have today to alter images and create, you know, graphics and do these sort of things. And it is a lost art. I mean, trying to find, you know, this stuff and using your you know, those tools to recreate stuff or, you know, find those things. But again, I think the tools that they just helped identify that, and it was. That was, again, another thrilling day. That was one of those, like, oh my gosh, I found it, and I'm running around the house, you know, super excited. Again, my watch very tolerant about but it's that adrenaline rush. I think it's like the archaeology of something. Like, I can see why people are, like, Indiana Jones is attracted to, like, try to find the next treasure, because it's that thrill of once you identify it, and once you, you know, it becomes a real world thing, it just makes a connection. Great serotonin boost.
And then the problem comes when you find the thing and you are compelled to buy it, no matter how ridiculous it is. Because at this victory, I had this experience with a painting, a print of a painting that appears in the Marsh Mansion. It's an equestrian scene. There's a whole equestrian theme on this set. And I don't particularly like the painting, but I found it. And I had to buy it.
I have the mural, the painting above Laura's dresser from Fire Walk With Me. That too is also one of those scenes where Bob's behind it and such. But I have that. It's not up yet. It will hopefully be. But it's a, you know, it's a great great thing. I had to have it.
I may or may not have that on my wall.
Small versions.
I want to get back to John's question leads into this whole other category of prop where certain props are connected to certain real-world locations, like finding the source of the image from that mural. There are a few other props that are like that. One that comes to mind is a postcard in the Johnson house. In the scene where Cooper is eating a donut and he opens the cabinet and you see all of these postcards pasted to the
That wasn't at Jacques' place.
That was Jacques.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jacques. Excuse me.
You love the Johnson.
I got my shade. Nervous about talking about Jade tonight. Yeah, and this was in Jacques' apartment. And there's a postcard where, if you pause it perfectly, it is two men with their bellies painted. Their faces painted on their bellies. And a few strange Google searches later, I found a replica of this postcard. That photo was taken at the KMDR Good Times Parade in the Bay Area, obviously nowhere near the fictional town of Twin Peaks, but very near to where Frank Silva is. So it's fun to, you know, go down these rabbit holes where there don't appear to be any connections, and you find something unexpected that kind of bridges the gap.
Other questions we can answer? Yes.
So I have likewise spent way too much money from following your blog. Thank you and curse you. So one thing I like about your blog is that you pick out themes of various places, like the dogs and clowns thing at the Johnson House. I think my favorite of those is the floral theme at the Palmer House. And I think somebody said it covers the stench of incest. So can you talk about the themes that you discover in the various places?
Yeah, there's a lot of flowers. A lot of flowers. A lot of flowers are found at the Palmer House, you know, from the wallpaper to some of the wall decorations, the images, and so forth. Particularly in Firewalker, you really see a lot of that.
And some of those are actually present in the actual house.
Oh yeah, which is great. Mary has actually put up that same the same things you can find there. Similar to, again, like down to like the record albums that are used or the apparel. It's all very much that particular thing. I'm trying to think of other ones that you see a common vibe. You know, one thing that helps, and just if you're doing this kind of research and you're thinking about it, one way to watch the show, and I encouraged James to do this the other day, watch it without sound. Yeah. And that will change your experience. You start to see things that you've never noticed. Like all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, I've never seen that. I've watched this how many times and I never saw that. But I think something about our senses, and if you hear the audio and you know the dialogue, right, you can recite it all along the way. By taking away that sound, it opens up other senses, and that's I think where a lot of like we start to see things that then do create these places or these experiences or these props that are part of that have that kind of vibe.
Carl, who's in the back of the room there, Carl did me the great service of giving me a hard drive with stills of every frame in the series, which has changed the game for researching props.
Thank you, Carl.
Because it does eliminate all distractions. You scroll through and you have no audio to pull you out of it. You don't worry about the story. You're looking at images with nothing to get in your way. We probably have time for one more question, and then we'll take a little bit of a break before our next panel. Mark.
I was going to ask, see that in the pilot when Betty Briggs answers the phone and you see like the holy statue, I always think that represents Major Briggs being a holy man, but did you ever find that?
I have searched and searched. I've gotten messages on Instagram about that specific prop, and I have never been able to find it.
Because you see in the kitchen, you see her like it's the bird, like Laura, and it's got the devil, like Leland, in the kitchen, and then she phones Betty, asks where Laura is, and then it scans over to that statue. So I was like, that symbolism with those props.
You know, it's interesting though, because you say you've been searching, you have a lot of searches, right, and so forth. And I think some of our work, go with me on this one, it's like SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The universe is vast, and SETI points its telescope at a certain point in the sky and analyze that, and it could be a very certain period of time. And so that time, if you point the telescope there, there's no sound, there's no things. You turn it a little bit more, and I think some of our work is like that, where we may not find it today, but revisiting it in a couple of months after time has passed because someone else has added it to eBay or someone else has found an image of it or something else exists with that, then can change it. So I have like folders upon folders and folders and folders of just like works in progress of like where I think this is or what it could be, but I've never been able to. Angel Picture is one of those that I know that it exists because it physically was there. It's just a matter of trying to find the right time in the right place on the internet to identify it.
Yeah, it's a never-ending hobby, which I think keeps Twin Peaks evergreen and rich for fans. There's always another thing to look for and another detail to appreciate.
There's always something else. Like I think Dr. Jacoby said it best, right? You know, that my search will never be resolved. You know, like it will always be going on part of my life. So I know that I have my work cut out for me for the rest of my life on that. But it's been great, honestly. For those that follow along, thank you. It's great to be able to share something that's I think what we're passionate about and being able to tell those stories. If it adds a different level of experience for your viewing, that you've watched it 25,000 times, and you add in something new, we just hope that connects with you in some way.
And we owe a lot to existing sites and publications who have done a lot of legwork for things like this and filming locations and other minute details like in Twin Peaks.
Oh, in Twin Peaks, Charles is in Twin Peaks site. That's a whole other dialogue, another panel for next year, right? Because we want to do this again, right? So the next year, that's the whole location thing. And again, Charles's work on In Twin Peaks was really the foundation for my obsession with going to all the film locations. And Misha's Twin Peaks Archive and Welcome to Twin Peaks. I mean, there's so many folks, and there was a time when there was nothing. There was that drought before the gold box was released, and there was in this posts, we thought maybe the deleted scenes, remember the big battle for the deleted scenes of Fire Walk With Me? That was decades, or it felt like decades. I guess it was decades, because it wasn't until what?
2 decades.
Yeah, 2014, so yeah, it was 2 decades, for that, so.
And of course, John Thorne and Craig Miller really paving the way for getting down to the nitty gritty. So yeah, this is a long-standing tradition that is.
We're just glad to be able to keep the tradition going and passing it on to others.
So with that, I'd like to thank Stephen Miller and Jason Mattson for joining us and touring my course. And we'll take a little break and we'll have another prop panel with prop master Jeff Moore from the second season and some new